the winner, if you don't mind, of the Global Gael Book of the Year for 2023. Tadhg Hickey, I have to ask you that sporting question. How does it feel?
Amazing, man. Amazing. I feel like oh feck, was it Alan McLaughlin getting the equalizer against Northern Ireland in 1993. That's the way I feel. Nobody knew that he was even in the squad. He came on, he chested it down and got us to the World Cup. That's the way I feel, man. I know
Jesus,
I'm
that's great.
buzzing. I'm buzzing.
Like I'm delighted for you. As I say, it is only a small award, but it is a recognition of what we all agreed here in the studio was the best Irish book of last year. Could I maybe start by asking you, Tyke, like you always hear that thing of everybody has a book in them and most people should leave it there. How did the idea come about for you? Were you approached as a sort of an internet celebrity kind of thing, or how did it work?
Yeah, to be honest, I was approached, and I suppose it's just not that it's important, but it's interesting to that's where it starts. So I didn't kind of go, oh my God, I gotta write this book that goes into detail about my family and my alcoholism. Like I
Yeah,
never
I
intended
would
that.
like to tell everybody all my problems and issues. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Like it was a process. And it's funny you're asking me this now because I was also explaining it to my brother the other day, because like he's massively supportive and he loves me and stuff. But I mean, they would never have chosen that I would have gone into the deep, dark secrets of the family to as part of something that I do in my career. So basically, I did a play a few years ago called In One Eye, Out the Other, which was a surreal look at my drinking, I suppose. And that was as far as I wanted to go, because I made these kind of surreal images around the drinking. This guy lives in a house on his own. He drinks cans all day. His mother was an alcoholic. His uncle was an alcoholic. His best friend is a turkey who's come to life that he's met at a kind of a petting farm. Sonia O'Sullivan is a cardboard cutout. Who lives in the attic with ET. It's all kind of mad stuff. And I loved doing that. But then Deirdre from Bonnie A Book saw that play and she said she'd had heard me talk about alcoholism a few times on the radio and whatnot. And she said, you should actually write your actual story. That could be powerful if you wrote your actual story. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of doing that. So then I attempted to write it and I kept out the juicier of the details in the first draft. And I think she was kind of saying, no, no, this isn't it at all. So in a second draft, I kind of experimented with telling the actual story in the hope that it still would never be published. And then she was like, okay, yeah, this is much more like it. So I think because of my own recovery, I know that if you don't tell the truth, you don't have any hope of recovering yourself and you're useless to the person next to you. I just decided that where possible, I tell the story warts and all and explain to my family as best I could some of the stuff that was going to come up.
That is the deal with the devil when you write an autobiography, and especially the kind of autobiography that you wrote because the person you are and what you've been through. How difficult was it for you to make that decision and to like because I think it's a very brave decision, Ty, because you don't come out of the book, with an S on your chest like a
Well,
superhero in many ways. Like,
no, no, no. Do you know what? I liked the idea that Bonnier had, which was that like you do this kind of like stupid face on the front, and you would pitch it as if it was kind of like a cheery memoir, comedy memoir from a guy that you probably don't know that you pick up at the airport. And actually, when you read it, then in part, it's absolutely harrowing. So I did like that kind of surprising the audience kind of thing. So I was definitely sold on that. But the experience of actually telling the story, do you know what? It was kind of so therapeutic in a way that kind of undone a lot of the fears that I had about doing it and the challenges of doing it. Again, because I suppose I'm in recovery, I'm used to digging deep on myself. I'm used to kind of going, yeah, that was completely wrong what I did. That was crazy. I let people down there. That's a shorthand for me. The more difficult, challenging stuff, I think, was writing about family and just trying to get that right. By far the most challenging thing, because I'm the youngest in my family and I have a relationship with my father and mother who are now passed on that is not the same as my older brothers. My eldest brother is 16, 17 years older than me. So I'm trying to write something that's not going to offend somebody else's perception and memory. And that is by far the most challenging thing to find that balance between this is my story, this is my experience of my parents, but not trample on somebody else's perspective. And I'm not sure if I got that right, to be honest, because I'm not sure if it's possible to get it absolutely perfect. But I had to be true to me as well. I suppose I committed to doing it, and if you're going to do it, you've got to do it balls out.
What are those conversations like in the family, right? So you go to your siblings and you say, right, I'm writing this book and I have to write it from my perspective. I can't, like, this is the only way I know how to do it. You know that your memory, your recollection, they were left the house, by the time much of this
Mm.
stuff that was going on in your life happened. Did you fight with them? Were they angry with you? Were they disgusted with you? Were they happy that were they sympathetic or empathetic towards how you grew up in that house?
I mean, all of the above, all of the above, really,
It
I
was a
think,
long conversation, but it sounded like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'll have a range. So my sister's the closest to me in age, and she would have had a very similar experience with my mother. So in that case, I was in constant dialogue with her as I was writing it, and I was kind of throwing memories at her, and she'd say, "Oh yeah, I remember that, and this also happened and whatnot." So in my sister's case, I think she sent me a lovely message afterwards when it came out, and she'd read it, and she said, "Oh, I just feel kind of glad that this is out now, that it's kind of that she felt a little bit healed from it as well." Now she's more than capable of writing her own book, and I think she probably should, to be honest, because there's multiple books in my mother. But my brother's is just a trickier conversation. Again, the love and support is undoubtedly there, but like they actually had a different mother, like they had a different father. They really did, like my mother's issues, shall we say, would have become much more pronounced by the time that I was coming of age. So they had a less strange, less insular, less scared mother. So they quite rightly would be, prone to kind of going, is that it? Did that actually happen? Is that the case? Like, am I misrepresenting her in some way? And they wouldn't be calling me a liar, but like maybe I'm being a bit melodramatic about things. And then you have to ask yourself, are you being melodramatic? But like, again, recovery has taught me that you kind of like to go into the old Socrates kind of mentality. Like, you kind of have to know yourself in order to get well. And I kind of know what went on. And what fills me with, I think I can sleep at night having done it, is that actually, as you know, having read it, it kind of ends up being a little bit of a love letter to my mother in a way. And I dedicate the book to her, and like I come out of the book basically kind of going, she was wacky. Like, I'm very wacky. And in a wacky way, we loved each other very much. And that's a very moving experience for me. Like I mean, I definitely cried a few tears that I didn't expect to cry, like by the time it was finished, kind of thinking, I love this woman. I didn't realize I actually loved her as much as I do. Because it's when you're younger and you're going through stuff and you've got your stuff and she's got her stuff, it's so much easier to hate her and to use anger. That's a really easy, but it's a much more treacherous, but I think fruitful journey to kind of go, no, no, she was actually trying her best with the hand that she was dealt, and she was. And for all her faults, she loved me. And that's an amazing thing to realize at the end of a book that you've written against your will.
yeah, and exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was what the next thing I was going to ask you was about the process itself, because you've written comedy sketches and you've written films and you've written stuff for the stage and you've written so many things and articles as well in your time, right? How different was the process of writing a book? For me, writing a book has always been, it's like an article, only bigger. It's just like, okay, it's
Yeah.
like 15 articles, one after the other. Did you find that difficult to become a sort of an author? Is it something that scared you when Bonnier's handed you that contract and went, here you go, Tadhg, you got to deliver on this here now? Was that something that frightened you in the beginning?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I'd have a lot of, as the book details, I'd have a lot of imposter syndrome, and I'd have a lot of like, who do you think you are? Kind of working class Cork mentality, like, Roy Keane getting barred from nightclubs kind of mentality. Like, uh, but yeah, oh yeah, like it's time to put on your big boy pants and write a book for sure. But I would humbly say, I feel like there's a difference between a memoir and say a novel. Like, I would still love to write a novel at some point, but I don't love it enough. I don't love the idea enough to sit down and go through that, what I can only imagine would be brutal torture. A memoir, for me anyway, was more about, am I willing to be honest? Am I willing to sit down and get this stuff out of me and be honest about the stories? Then obviously you need to there's creative stuff and you need to put some shape on it. But it's really about being honest, because I've read many memoirs over the years, and it's only very occasionally you'd read one where you feel like, okay, this guy or this girl right now is being balls honest. You know, as opposed, I think it's something that you'd said before when we spoke before. I've read so many memoirs and I'm halfway through going, that's not the guy. That's not the guy at all. That's there's no warts here. And I'm not that I'm only interested in warts, but if you're not being true to yourself. There's a guy who helps me a lot in recovery and says, even if somebody's an asshole, like as long as they're being honest, we usually get on all right.
Mm.
And I really believe that, if somebody's just being true to themselves, then they're all right by me. And so that's what I wanted to get through in the memoir, that I wasn't this great guy. I'm maybe not as unlikable as Limmy, if you've read Limmy's autobiography, but I make mistakes. I made some horrible mistakes, and I've confronted them. And I think it's important to put that in the book, as opposed, you get to the end of writing something and you kind of go, actually, I was right all along. I don't really like that type of book, So yeah.
It's like there's something wrong with the happy ever after in memoirs. Like, unless you've
Yeah,
seen, as you say, the warts and all. How
absolutely.
important was the editor in that process, Ty? Because sometimes, as you mentioned there, the first draft, you went, okay, well, you held some things back, and she kind of went, nah, this is not the
Yeah.
guy, and you had to sort of take that on board. Was that a difficult conversation with her?
I actually ended up having, and this is one of the best things that came out of the Bonnie, I think, for me, was that like there was kind of like multiple editors along the way. So there was people who would guide the actual structure of it, which was hugely important, because I, again, with the bit of self-knowledge, I'm quite a good guy for ideas, and I can be woeful at structure. A structure to me is a pain in the ass, and it gets in the way of like, oh, I've got this new idea, but I don't know where it's supposed to go. Then there was editors who would go, "You're not being as honest there as you could be." There was a technical editor her name escapes me. There was a kind of a technical editor in the UK that would say, "I'm not sure if we'd say that here. Will we stick with it and double down on the Corkism, or will we make it more understandable for UK readers?" Because it was initially a UK release, because it's a UK company, I suppose. So there was all sorts of editors that fitted my infirmities along the way. So that was great. But in my own defense, I would say that I only had one moment where I wasn't being honest enough, and I knew it myself, and I just needed somebody to almost give me the permission to go and do it. And after that, then I went all out. Having said all that, and I may be repeating myself now, it's not a happy ever after, even the writing of it, because one of my brothers hasn't, I don't think, read it yet. And if he reads it, he may not be totally happy with it, and I have to make peace with that. Do you know what I mean? So like, it wasn't a family. I don't come from a cozy middle class family that we have a get together and we share ideas and we pass around the talking cushion, and at the end everyone goes, yeah, we give him a pat on the back, he's a great lad. It's not like that. It's you sometimes you'd have to just trust your own judgment on things. So the editors helped with that, but they can't help you when it's out in the big bad world, and not everyone might be 100% happy with being depicted in the book.
Mm. There's two great moments when you write your first book, and one of them is when you see it on the shelves out in the wild for the first time in Dubray Books in Dublin or in a
Yeah.
bookshop in Cork. And the second less great moment is realizing that everybody's going to read this now and they're going to know everything about me. And I've like, this is on the record now forevermore,
Exactly.
Has there been, apart from within your own family, has there been anybody in your past that has gone, I mean, it could be partners, because again, you don't hide any of this, I
Yeah.
mean, you have a child she's almost 20 now, is she?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
so it's her life as well, Tadhg. This is
Mhm.
this is her dad coming out with this. All her mates know who you are.
Yeah.
Has
Yeah.
it been positive? Has it been negative? Now that the book is out in the open.
Yeah, now to be fair with Quiva, I did have a lot of conversations with her beforehand to say, look, this is what I'm doing. Are you happy for me to use your name? I can use a moniker, I can kind of fictionalize it a little bit or whatever. And we had a series of conversations, and she kind of eventually gave me the green the green light to
Did
go
she
ahead.
regret that now, Tadhg, knowing what's in the book?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think she's probably at an age now as well, whereas if it was a few years ago, it might have been trickier. And she's kind of at an age now where she's just a little bit more independent herself. And I like to think she might get a little bit of a kick out of it at this point, but she would never let me know that. Like if I've done anything that might benefit her in some way, she kind of wouldn't really let me know. But no, I actually have to say it's been overwhelmingly positive, because I didn't name, say old drinking buddies or girlfriends. I didn't name them, but they would often obviously know themselves that they were in it. So in most cases, like I had one absolutely gorgeous experience recently where I met an ex-girlfriend of mine at a school gate because I was picking up my nephew. And when I saw her, I immediately panicked because I was like, there's at least 10 pages about her in the book. And I was like, I also haven't seen her in years. Like I haven't potentially, maybe with the exception of one hello across the road, I haven't spoken to this girl in 15, 20 years. Like, and she came over and I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you're in the book. I probably should have let you know beforehand. And she's like, no, I'm delighted. I'm delighted. And she said I describe her in the book in a flattering way. And she said, whenever her husband has given her hassle these days, she refers to the book like and says, look, I'm top totty. I'm top toddy. It says it here in black and white. So
In
she
a
was actually
bestseller, no
delighted.
less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, and I have one drinking buddy who came to the launch. I hadn't seen him in years, and I love him. I love him. And I make the point in the book that just because you went drinking with somebody or maybe taking drugs with somebody and you got clean doesn't mean that they were bad or evil. Like life is so much more nuanced than that, and relationships are more nuanced. And again, I wouldn't have seen him for years, and he turned up at the book launch, and it was great to see him. He was having a few drinks before he came in. And we were just laughing, like, and it's no, I think hopefully I was affectionate with pretty much everyone, with the exception of myself, really, ultimately, which was again the whole point of writing it, I think.
Hmm. I think it was very, very skillfully done because when you know how the sausage is made, as I do from writing books like this and from reading them a lot of the time, you go, oh Jesus, he did that very well. That ex-girlfriend, now he did that very well indeed.
Oh,
So
nice one, thank
it
you.
was very skillfully done. I wanted to ask you, Ty, because the audience for this podcast is some people were saying to me, well, Ty lives in Cork. Why is he of interest to a global Irish audience? And what stuck out to me was the times that you were in London and the times that you were in Edinburgh, and you came across as even more lost than you ever were in Cork. When you went to the Edinburgh Festival, were you looking for fame? Were you looking for a place to hide? Were you looking for a place where nobody would be looking over your shoulder? Can you remember back to why you went to these places to perform?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think Edinburgh, particularly the first time in Edinburgh, is where the drinking and drug taking and the kind of addiction part of myself kind of crystallized for sure. But I went over looking for fame, of course. Yeah, definitely. I'd done one play in Cork. The book hopefully illustrates that I had a really low self-esteem, but a massive, like a chaotic ego, like that you couldn't even get your head around. I certainly couldn't. And I was in one like pretty small amateur production in Cork, and I got in my mind headhunted to do the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with funding. So I went over going, this is it. Like obviously this is the break. I'm obviously spectacularly talented. I
The
just
Cork
can't
Robert
quite.
De Niro now, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Cillian Murphy and Robert De Niro kind of mash up, like. And then I got to Edinburgh, and I think this is the powerful thing about addiction, that I got there. I probably was, a reasonably okay performer, like at that age, and I was interested in the play, and it was a big opportunity. We had a nice slot. It was on the Royal Mile. It was in a good venue, and I was 20. I think I turned 20 when I was over there, 19 maybe, and it was a good launch pad actually, looking back in it. But I got there and I realized, oh my God, I'm away from home. I don't have my mum. My mum's not here. Like I don't have to worry about my mum. Um, and I love drinking, like so. And then I think like 2 mornings later, I discovered that there's an early house around the corner in Leith, and it opens at 4 a.m. I was like, what? Like this is so. As soon as I realized that the early house opened at that time, I realized probably even then, I don't really care about any of this other stuff. That other stuff is just by the by. I want to just get out of my head. I just want to escape whatever my reality is. Um, so yeah, so that became it's a perfect experience because it should have been about me trying to launch myself if I was this guy that I set myself up to be, which is this kind of hungry for fame and recognition lad. But I just spent that month just drinking and taking drugs and calling in sick for the play and causing absolute carnage and getting lost and going up to Glasgow and smoking crack and like, yeah, it was just like train spotting, I think is the way Deirdre described it. It's like my own train spotting experience, like for the month, and then came back. And I remember my sister, I'm not sure if this is in the book, but my sister, who I'm very close to, like seeing me walk in the door, having been in Edinburgh for the month, like, and I thought I was coming back to a hero's welcome. I'd done the play, we got to the end of it. I packed up, dot the I's, cross the T's. I'm obviously now going on to some major movie with Cillian Murphy, like, but I walked in the door and my sister had tears in her eyes because I think I was about like 10 stone, like 9 or 10 stone. I was gaunt. I hadn't eaten for the month. And I suppose then I didn't realize the full extent of it, but looking back on it, I was like, oh, I've massive addiction issues. Like I'm running away from something. So I forgot to eat for the month, but I certainly didn't forget to take drugs and drink my head off. And the play was a by the by. Like, I was using the play as if something, the play was an interstitial in what was actually a drinking month. Yeah.
Would you have been open to somebody saying to you, like, the fuck are you doing here? You know, do you need help? What's wrong with you? Would you have listened? Like, if somebody who had been working on that play, if somebody in the Irish community had gone to see you in Edinburgh and said, Jesus, you used to be 12, 13 stone, played football and all that kind of thing, would you have it, or would you just brush that off and head for the early house anyway?
Oh my God, I would have been fully closed to that. Because I would have been like, are you joking me? I've only just left Cork. I felt, as I say in the book, I felt that I'd been dealt a very, very tough hand. I had this kind of bizarre matriarch in the house. I'd left her. My dad had recently died. I was over in Edinburgh and I felt as soon as I started drinking, I was like, well, this is my time now. I'm just going to get absolutely wrecked. If somebody had tried to stop me then, I would have attacked them, I'd say, to be honest with you, because it was like, I have a drink problem. No, no, I'm leaving people who have drink problems. Like, it would be years and years before I would even countenance the fact that I had a problem. Like, I was like ringing in sick for the play, losing my shoes, and walking up the road with a pair of plastic bags on my feet, holding a case of wine, and meeting the director at the house that I lived in. And at no point did I think I had a drink problem. I just thought, like, why is she stalking me, like, and wrecking my buzz? Do you know what I mean? So, like, no, no, it would have been years. And even at that, that would always have to come from yourself anyway. The idea that you might have a problem. I mean, I talk to people today in their 50s and they would be in as much denial now as I was then. So denial is a hell of a drug, like, and it would have been year. Also, my mental health hadn't started to suffer that bad yet. And that's a big thing. Like, as long as your mental health is all right ish and you're drinking a drug and you're enjoying it, there's no way you're going to stop. Why would you?
Hmm. You're bulletproof when you're out of your head, basically, and of course, as you say, you're the star of the show. You're famous. You're going to be doing all these things. You mentioned there the denial is a hell of a drug, right? But there's also a period for many people when they know they can't stop, but they know.
Yeah.
How long did that go on for you? When did the realization come? There's, hang on a second, this is not right. This is not doing me any good. When did that come for you?
I'd say like I think I stopped so I'm stopped now 8 years, so 33. I'd say yeah, my 30s really. From 30 on, I couldn't sell it to myself anymore. So you always have these kind of like I was saying to my partner even the other night about something else, I would constantly have these little dialogues in my head about anything. So it could be work stuff or, we all do it. And you kind of weigh up the pros and cons. How likely is this to happen and how unlikely is it to happen? This would be going on in my head about drink all the time. So when you were saying there, like in Edinburgh at 19 or 20, the dialogue it's very quick. It's like, do I have an issue here? No, no, you're having a great time. Conversation over. Like by 30, I was kind of going, okay, well, I'm not allowed to see my daughter again now. And I'm living in a house that's falling down in Douglas. I can't work. I'm after being let go by RTE. Is there a drink problem here? Yeah, there is. Like, there's definitely some issue because every time I drink, these things are happening. Then the next conversation is like you accept that you have a drink problem. The next conversation is like, do you countenance a life where you're not drinking though? And that's the much deeper question because if you feel like you need drink, particularly drink because kind of drugs were gone now really for most of my 30s, it was just drink. Can I live a life without drink? Like so for a lot of the way through the 30s, I was thinking, I don't think so. Unfortunately, I just don't think so. I can't imagine it. How am I going to assuage the pain? Because I get bouts of pain of just being alive. And I didn't really understand at that point that I could, go for counseling or do meditation or do other things. So the idea of someone to take my painkiller away from me, no. And as you quite rightly point out, you're an alky, you've got a serious issue. I don't want to be not seeing my daughter. I'm obsessed with my daughter. I want to be working because I'm still ambitious and I still want to do good work. So I don't want any of these repercussions, but I can't figure out how to stop drinking. And that's hell. That is hell.
One of the things that's hard about these things, Tig, because there's such a stigma attached to saying I'm an alcoholic, I'm a
Yeah.
drug addict, I can't cope. And this extends across from addiction to mental health to even asking for help, especially for those of us who are men. Um, how much of a role did shame play in the way you went about your recovery? Is it something you're glad that you felt? Did you feel shame at all? Can you be kind to yourself now, despite all the things that you've outlined in this book?
Shame played a huge part of it. Yeah, it's funny, no one's ever asked me that before on the old book tour, and it's huge. Oh my God. And it's a dangerous game to play, I think. Um, oh man, it's a tough one. That's a tough one, right? I mean, in the case of somebody I was trying to bring into recovery recently, not that, I'm a savior or whatever, someone that I was talking to who was in the outskirts of recovery at the moment, did they feel shame? And sometimes shame can make you feel so low that you get to what they call in recovery anyway, the jumping off point. We're either going to go one or two ways. So you may die or you may start your recovery journey. And this is what's so tricky about it. It sometimes is useful to get to that level of pain. That's where I was at, definitely. Like I stopped drinking for good, hopefully, touch wood, when I felt like I was going to die if I didn't. And for me, that's what I needed. But shame played a huge role in that. I was so ashamed of myself, and felt like I was like a shit father, and felt like I'd let my family down, and I felt kind of disgusted by myself and being kind of trapped in myself. But having said all that, that was a launch pad for recovery for me. But I'm sure lots of people feel that level of shame and then they take their lives. So I don't know. There's no easy answer to that, really. I think to move away from the type of societal shame that we have for addicts is absolutely crucial. But maybe shame is not the right word, though. I don't know, man. I'm thinking out loud here. I'm not quite sure what the answer to this is, because I needed to feel so bad in myself, I think, to actually have that moment of clarity where I kind of go, if I keep going this way, I'm going to get killed or I'm going to take my life. And that seemed to be completely clear to me in a way that nothing had ever been so clear. Like, that's definitely going to happen if I keep going this way. I don't want to die, so I go this way. What wasn't helpful for me, though, I suppose, was to have this kind of societal shame, both inside and outside the family, that because I couldn't control my drinking, there was kind of something wrong with me. That there was something morally wrong with me. That was not helpful at all. Um, and the very few times in the book, I think, that I mentioned something that I don't take full responsibility for, I don't say that's all my fault and all my responsibility, is that idea that you get in Ireland, which is the biggest conundrum of being an Irish person, I think, for me. It's that, like, a country that's marinated in alcohol and actually supports the idea of getting wrecked so much, like in its advertising particularly, has no understanding or real meaningful substantive empathy for the alcoholic. It's really great at creating alcoholics, I think, and drug addicts, but really shit at understanding them. And I'm not sure what you do about that, to be honest with you, but it's something that's still the case right now in Ireland, I feel.
Yeah, it is that thing of social consequences. I often find it with free speech as well, and I say, okay, if you want to test the limits of free speech, go call your mother the C word and let me know how you get on, because to some extent, people sort of pointing a finger at you and saying, Tadhg, that's not socially acceptable is one thing. But that leads on to my next question, right? Because you talked there about coming to the jumping off point where it was either I'm going to die or I'm going to go into recovery, right? When you went into recovery, who did you go into recovery for? Did you go into it for yourself? Did you go into it for Quiva? Did you go into it for your future self, your past self? Have you ever asked yourself that question, and what was the answer to it?
I have actually. That's an easy answer, because previous goals at recovery, that weren't the real goal, that weren't the proper goal that has ended up being my life now, were always for other people. So it would have been for my ex-partner primarily, so that I could get access to seeing Quiva again. So Quiva, I suppose. Um, my mother, I knew that I was driving my mother crazy, and as much as we had a weird, awkward relationship, I did love her, like, and I didn't want to cause her any more distress. And I could see that my drinking was aging her, and was going to kill her. Like, she was on the verge of getting a heart attack because I'd go missing for days, and there was times even up to my late 20s where I was still living in the house with her. I was treating her place like just a shack, like that I'd rock up to, like like a tenant or whatever. Um, so it was for her another time. There was times where I went into recovery because of ego. I had some big thing with RT or something. I was like, well, I got to get my shit together, because I knew even at a young age, my drinking was a kind of a disability. Like, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful to people with disabilities, but like, it really felt like that, because I was like, I'm competing with these guys here. and like I'm doing okay sober. If I start drinking, I'm gone. I'm down to the bottom of the league table and I'm going to get fired. Like so it was like carrying this thing the whole time. The last time I went into recovery again, touch wood, in 2015, it was completely for me. It was absolutely staring annihilation in the face. And it was like, I don't want to die. I'm terrified of dying, or going completely mad. You know, that, and they're one and the same for me, like just losing the head completely or getting wet brain or something like that. I was like, okay, that's where I'm headed now. And I was absolutely terrified, and fear will keep you sober for a while. So when I finally threw in the towel, I wasn't thinking of, I mean, this might sound selfish, but I wasn't thinking of Quiva or work or my mother or my partner at all. I was thinking it was an existential do or die, like, and I wanted to live. I always wanted to live. I just wanted the pain to go away.
It's the most simple of instincts, that survival instinct at the end of the day when you go, this is
Exactly.
fucked up completely, you know. Thankfully, at the time we're talking now, 8+ years, or we're coming up on 8 years sober and that kind of thing. Does that pain still exist anywhere within you? Is it just that you deal with it in a different way now? Because all of these things feed into one another, you know,
Mm.
these sort of senses of inadequacy and that kind of thing. And then you drink, and then you go, well, of course I'm shit because I drink and this kind of thing. Have you been able to remove all those things that motivated your drinking and your drug taking to begin with?
I wouldn't use the word remove, because that kind of feels like, you know, you're after getting a bit of a kind of a transplant or a kind of a temperament transplant or something. Like that doesn't happen. Like I still have the same crazy head that I had probably when I was born, but you come to learn to kind of understand it first of all and love it and kind of see where it's going and not allow it to take over to the point where it suddenly becomes a problem. And it's so much of it is about the thinking. So like I'll still often have wacky thoughts, and now I can laugh at them. You know, I can often have egotistical thoughts today that are immediately funny to me. But before I would take them seriously and I go on a little journey with them, kind of going, yes, I need to go back drinking actually because the people of Cork are falling apart without my contribution. Like, you know, the
From the
pubs.
high stool.
Exactly. Like I used to genuinely think the pubs and clubs, and particularly the parties of Cork, were kind of missing their kind of messianic leader. Like if I didn't get back to them at once, you know. So this is the kind of bullshit like that kind of characterizes the mind of somebody who's like struggling with addiction. But to answer your question, like you find things along the way that really help. So like meditation, really like transcendental meditation has helped so much. I did CBT like almost because like people were just banging on about it so much, and I was like, "Gosh, look, I'll just try this thing." Like I knew somebody who was doing it, and I was like, "I'll just try it." Like CBT has been unbelievable for me, like because so much of my issues are in my thinking. So like you know, you wake up and you have the thought like I'm a piece of shit actually, like and never amount to anything. Like you know, the thought would just flash across your head, and then CBT it just gives you this kind of workbook outlet for it, where you kind of go, okay, write down that thought. Does this check out? Like, you know, is there any evidence for this? Like, there's actually no evidence for it. All right, Grant, I don't have to believe that thought, so on I go. Like, it sounds so simple, and obviously I'm not doing, you know, the wonder of CBT justice with that kind of reductionist outlook on it. But for me, like just challenging the thinking before it gets going has been absolutely huge. But the main thing for me is like hanging around with other people in recovery and doing a program in recovery and doing a lot of soul searching. If you put all those tools together, I have enough to combat the unpleasant edges of my own thinking and mentality. But they're only edges. Like there's lots of parts of the thinking me and the soulful me that I love and I've come to love and I enjoy and I kind of accept myself. But by God, it's been a journey and it's still going. That's the thing. There's no finished. Like I'd never ever feel like I've written this book now, so I'm cured and I'm going to go around curing people. That's where I'm definitely going to go back drinking if I get into that mentality, you know.
That's the thing. I would hate people to leave this conversation thinking, oh, that's it. Your man's finished. That's all. No, this is every single day that you have
Oh
to deal
man.
with these things and that. There was actually, there's a soccer goalkeeper, Sharon, that I talked to last year about a similar issue. And she was saying the way she coped with her sort of critical voice was that she would use the voice of Donald Duck in her own head. And that thing of saying you're shit, if you say it in Donald Duck's voice, you can't take it seriously. And I just
Brilliant.
thought it was a brilliant tactic, you
Yeah.
know. The book is out there now. It's called Portrait of the Piss Artist as a Young Man. We're hopefully going to be doing a live event, you and me, soon. See me, I'm giving a hostage to fortune here now, Ty. We're going to meet up in
Love
Dublin
it.
and talk about more of
I'm
these
all
things.
over it.
Now that you've done it, right, there are two types of people who've written a book. One who has done it and want, oh, yes, I want more of this. I want more of this. I want to be in the newspaper. I want to write all my thoughts down. And there's other people who go, I am never doing that again. Which field would you be in, do you think?
I think I probably at the moment would certainly be in field two anyway. I have no burning desire to add anything more to. I feel like it's actually the bottom line in talking about my drinking for now, I think. And I'd like to go back to, and I am going back to doing more kind of non-addiction related creative outlets. If I write something again, it would be, I would say, something approaching a comedy novel. But again, like I could see myself doing that maybe in 10 or 20 or 30 or 40, 50 years time.
It's this thing as well. When you're on sort of book tours and that, you mentioned a book tour a little bit earlier on there, it's just like me asking you the same questions all the time. And you just go, oh, jeez. Now, unfortunately, it's maybe the first time that your audience or that particular audience is hearing you say these things, but it is, you kind of have to jump through the hoops entirely. Have you found professionally, Tadhg, that the book and the things that you've said in it, do people treat you differently? And when I say people, I mean RTE, BBC, publishers, bookers, comedy agents. Do they look at you differently now, do you think?
I don't think so. I think it's, you see, it's hard for me to say because I do a lot of political comedy.
Mm.
So, like for instance, at the moment there now, I'd be doing a lot of pro-Palestine sketches. So, like, I have the kind of numbers that people who aren't pro-Palestine would be getting lots of paid partnerships and would be getting offered lots of stuff. Now, I never get offered anything like that. So, I would imagine that's more to do with the politics than it would be to do with the book. But no, I haven't had a negative reaction to it professionally. I have to say, people overall have been very supportive. I have had mixed interviews through no fault of their own, where, like, for instance, this interview is very playful and we're talking about serious stuff, but I have had some interviews which feel like an intervention. That's the only thing I have noticed where I'm kind of going, no, no, I'm through all this shit. Like, you don't have to sit with me and hold my
I'm
hand.
grand. Seriously, I'm
You know,
grand.
yeah. You get a lot of stuff kind of going, so time when we were your lowest, you know. That's, and again, that just speaks to a kind of misunderstanding, I think, of addiction, and comes back actually to one of the main reasons why I agreed to write it. Personally, to deal with my own stuff and go on that journey. But I also felt like when Deirdre pitched it to me that if you write this in your style, people who have no notion of what alcoholism actually is in this country, who are supposedly well educated and in positions of power, they might read it and they might get some sense of what's actually going on there, which is it's a mental illness. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bloody mental illness, like, news just in. Uh, and that might aid some understanding of the whole thing. That's one of the reasons why I did it. And I think that actually has happened a little bit. Like, I've been in the middle of an interview with somebody and I can feel like oh yeah, I get it. I have really bad anxiety as well. I mightn't have treated my anxiety with a load of cans, but I understand the fact that you used to feel like you were in the midst of a panic attack a lot of the way through your childhood. And I think that's brilliant. Like, that's an amazing thing to be able to just contribute to that conversation, because I don't know about you, but I felt when I was growing up, the alcoholic was over here and the person with a mental health issue was over here. We probably need to get them to hospital and lock away the key. With the alcoholic, we'll just kick him in the corner. The thing in the corner, is a friend of mine in recovery says, he used to be referred to when he was drinking, to mind the thing in the corner. So it's even got Halloween kind of horror kind of imagery, like,
Well, it's,
but
it's kind of like Steve O'Timothy up in Galway says. It's like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just fond of a few drinks, kind of thing.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
We have this whole language about it that, like you say, sometimes it's almost playful.
yeah,
Ah, yeah, don't mind your man. Like, he's been there, but there's never
yeah.
any sort of, offer of, as you say, it's not recognized as being a mental health thing.
No, no.
Tyke, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to talk about this, and indeed your honesty,
Go
both
on,
in this
pleasure.
conversation and in the book. Is that chapter over now, or is there a risk that you're going to become the guy who can speak eloquently and wrote a brilliant book about being an alcoholic? Can you sort of go, okay, can I be an actor slash writer slash comedian again now? Do you think that's going to work, or is this something that's always going to be part of what you're asked about in interviews like this?
I don't mind being asked about it, because the way I look at it is, like, again, one of the reasons I wrote the book is to aid that understanding. But importantly as well, it's not just me finding out my stuff about me. There are other people who have already gotten onto me, and thankfully a lot of people who said that they weren't quite ready to go to meetings yet, but they read the book and they might now kind of do something about it. Now, I'm not saying AA has the monopoly on it, that you can get recovery in all sorts of ways, but just might be a route for somebody who's struggling. Or say if you're young and you feel like your life is over and you're never going to do anything now because you can't drink, which is the way that I think sometimes advertising feels a bit like that in Ireland, that if you're not drinking, you're out of the gang kind of thing.
And you're
Hopefully,
deeply unattractive as well.
totally, yeah, you're never going to have an intimate moment with your an intimate romantic moment again either. Like, but yeah, so I partly wrote it so that people would get something out of it. They might feel like they're struggling with addiction, or they know somebody who's struggling with addiction. So I will never not want to talk about it if someone wants to talk about it. But yeah, you're right. I would like to that would be my bottom line on the recovery thing. I don't want to become a recovery influencer and like all my stuff is about recovery, and stuff like that. No disrespect to anybody who's doing that, but I just wanted to say this. This was my utterance on it, and it said no. And I go back to hopefully doing political satire, which is where I kind of see myself ultimately progressing.
It's an absolutely brilliant book, a portrait of the piss artist as a young man. It will soon be available on Tadhg Hickey's website. And indeed, we'll get together in Dublin or Cork or somewhere soon enough and talk about it. But for now, Tadhg Hickey, winner of the Global Gael Book of the Year for 2023. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much, buddy. Absolute pleasure.